Oliver Kane sat in his room, calm and quiet as always. The urgent call from the Virtual Reality Commission had pulled him out of his usual routine. Crimes in the deep virtual world were no longer simple incidents without real-world consequences. If someone killed in the virtual world was found dead in the real one, the situation was serious. For Kane, this meant a complex case, where all his nightmares came together. Using brain-computer interfaces, the victims connected to the digital world were subject to virtual attacks that resulted in deadly outcomes in reality. Not long ago, a signal sent to the body of a person who had been killed in the virtual world had caused their heart to stop in real life. What seemed like science fiction was now a cold reality. In another case, a victim had been reported to suffer a stroke in the real world after a virtual assault on their nervous system. Oliver had no choice but to track down these horrifying crimes and dive into the dark corners of the virtual world. In the real world, people thought everything was under control. But experts like Oliver knew what lurked in the shadows of virtual reality. Unfortunately, virtual worlds had become a new playground for criminals. The level of cybercrime had reached a point where every step carried tension and deadly risks. As Oliver put on his VR headset, his vision went dark, and with a deep hum resonating in his ears, he let himself enter the virtual world. As he logged into a platform called Dark Haven, his body remained motionless in a chair in the real world, but his mind was fully transported to another universe. Dark Haven could be a dangerous place for an ordinary player, but for someone like Oliver, a cyber detective, this world was just a dark labyrinth. He had to be cautious and keep his cool to navigate through it. He found himself in the middle of a desert. All around was nothing but dryness, dirt, and ruins of old buildings. This region, reflecting the dark theme of the platform, was a common hangout for virtual criminals. But there was something odd here. Even though there were no visible signs of life, Oliver instinctively felt that he was being watched. His cyber experience had taught him to stay on high alert at all times. His hand reached for his sword. Yes, in this virtual world he was a warrior, a detective in the real world, but a fighter here. He started moving quickly to find the first victim. There was no one in sight, but the silence of the virtual world was hiding danger. He entered a building and began scanning the area. Not far ahead, he noticed a trail of blood red. As he approached, he saw that the virtual blood droplets were floating in the air. This wasn't some random virtual glitch, but a deliberate clue left behind. The victim's last moments might provide Oliver with the lead he needed. But just then, he heard footsteps behind him. He quickly turned and drew his sword. Standing before him was a tall figure in a hood, its face hidden in the darkness. Slowly it approached him, and with each step Oliver's skin crawled. He realized that this figure wasn't a virtual character, but an AI under someone's control. The figure spoke in a low, echoing voice. "You won't make it out of this world alive, detective." Without a second's hesitation, Oliver swung his sword at the figure. As soon as the blade hit, the figure leaped back and disappeared. It wasn't an attack, but a warning. He took a deep breath. This was just a shadow. But this shadow carried the trail of the real criminal behind it. Oliver refocused his mind, knowing that the threats here were far more dangerous than an ordinary hacker group. The virtual world was the perfect platform for criminals to hide. Tracking them in cyberspace wasn't like gathering evidence in the real world. Here, everything could change in an instant, and the traces could be erased in mere seconds. Soon, he noticed a group of virtual security guards rushing toward him. These weren't the local security forces of the platform. They were mercenaries planted here to create danger rather than protect the victims. He had to be prepared to face them. Taking a deep breath, he drew his sword again because this time a real battle was about to begin. The security guards attacked from all directions. In virtual reality, speed and reflexes were of utmost importance because every move had a direct impact on the real-world nervous system. Oliver deflected the first blow, then dodged the attacks of two more guards with sharp agility. Every move had to be precise. Striking the virtual sword at the wrong angle could damage his muscles in the real world. When one of the guards lunged at him with a large axe, Oliver narrowly avoided the blow by dropping to the ground. He swiftly swung his sword and pierced the enemy's armor, neutralizing him. But the other two guards quickly charged at him. Without missing a beat, Oliver knocked one of them down with a kick and delivered a hard blow to the other's jaw with the hilt of his sword. As the man fell to the ground, Oliver's breathing was ragged. Fighting in the virtual world was just as exhausting as in real life. Once the last enemy was down, the surroundings fell silent. He scanned the area to check for any new threats, but there was no one else in sight. For the moment, he was safe, but he knew the silence wouldn't last long. This world was a place where danger constantly loomed, and Oliver was only at the beginning of his journey. Taking a deep breath, he began thinking about his next move. To find the real criminal behind the murders, he would have to dig deeper. In the virtual world, there was a map of platforms where such crimes took place. But the map wasn't accessible to everyone. The information was highly classified, and Oliver had to head to his next destination, Psycho City. As Oliver prepared to leave Dark Haven and enter Psycho City, he once again felt the coldness of the real world. He closed his eyes and took a few deep breaths. He needed to focus his mind on the next battle. Every minute he spent in the virtual reality world blurred his sense of time in the real one, leaving his body even more exhausted. But he couldn't stop. He had to keep going until he found and stopped the criminal. When he put the VR headset back on, he plunged into the virtual world again. However, this time, the environment was very different. Psycho City, as the name suggested, was a dark and twisted place. The sky was covered in deep purple and grey clouds. A strange electric hum filled the air. The buildings stretched endlessly into the sky, and the artificial light leaking from their windows did more to fuel chaos than illuminate the streets. There was no order here, only anarchy and madness. Oliver moved cautiously through the dark, labyrinthine streets of the city. His intel indicated that this place was the center of the crimes. A powerful criminal organization was based here, led by Cypher, the most dangerous criminal in the virtual world. Cypher was notorious for causing deaths in the virtual realm that resulted in real-world fatalities. Oliver's mission was to track down Cypher and bring him to justice. As he moved through the streets, he knew that traps could be lurking around every corner. Cybercriminals were often experts at manipulating the virtual world, and they would be prepared for someone with Oliver's skills. His attention was drawn to a massive building up ahead. It looked like a kind of headquarters, with heavy security and digital soldiers patrolling the perimeter. Oliver quietly observed. This could be where Cypher held his secret meetings. Suddenly, he was startled by a sound behind him. Oliver quickly turned, drawing his sword. Standing before him was a figure clad entirely in black armor. This wasn't a regular guard. It was a type of virtual enforcer he had never seen before. The black-armored figure approached Oliver with slow, heavy steps, the massive axe in his hand gleaming in the air. Oliver realized in that moment that this fight would not be a typical skirmish. As the figure attacked, Oliver swiftly dodged, but the axe was coming down at incredible speed. He narrowly escaped the blow by sidestepping just in time. The ground shook as the axe crashed down with a thunderous noise. Oliver noticed that the power of this figure was pushing the boundaries of the virtual environment. No normal user could generate such force. Gripping his sword tightly, Oliver counterattacked. In a flash, he moved closer to the figure and struck its armor with his blade. but the sword didn't even leave a scratch. This made Oliver even more uneasy. He now understood that the enemy before him held more authority in the virtual world than a typical user. This was Cypher's personal guard. The guard swung the axe again, and this time Oliver tried to redirect the blow with his sword. But the sheer power of the strike nearly knocked the sword from his hands. At the last moment, he regained his balance and jumped back. The guard, undeterred, charged at him once more. Oliver aimed a slash at the figure's face, but the guard turned his head, dodging the attack. After the failed strike, Oliver had to quickly come up with a new strategy. When the guard attacked again, Oliver didn't retreat. Instead, he slashed quickly, his first strike landing on the guard's knee, throwing him off balance. Then Oliver spun around and struck the shoulder joint. The figure stumbled, losing balance for just a moment, and fell to the ground. This was Oliver's opportunity. He swung his sword toward the guard's throat and landed the final blow, rendering the figure powerless. Taking a deep breath, Oliver stood still. Another attack could come at any moment, but this victory had bought him some time. As the guard's body collapsed to the ground, the digital environment around them flickered, and the figure's body completely disappeared. Once again, Oliver was reminded of how real the dangers in the virtual world were. Every death here signaled an end to something in the real world. Oliver's thoughts returned to Cypher. He needed to get inside this building and gather information as soon as possible to track him down. He approached the entrance and carefully slipped inside. He had no idea what awaited him inside this building, but everything had just become far more dangerous. On the path to Cypher, the greatest battles were yet to come. As Oliver stepped into the dark building, a sense of unease crept over him. The silence was only broken by the echo of his footsteps. The corridors were narrow, dimly lit, and covered with a metallic sheen. Weak electrical currents ran through the cables on the walls, making the atmosphere colder and even more unsettling. This was Cypher's virtual headquarters, and Oliver had no idea what kind of battle awaited him inside. But turning back was no longer an option. He advanced cautiously, his eyes scanning the surroundings, ready for any traps or attacks. Even in a virtual world, danger could lurk around every corner. Taking a deep breath, Oliver tried to suppress the anxiety growing within him. One thought kept him focused: find Cypher and put an end to this virtual massacre. After walking for a while, he arrived in a large, round room. In the center, there was a wide holographic table displaying streams of data related to the virtual world. At the heart of the room stood a massive screen, and on it, Cypher's cold and sinister face appeared. "You've managed to find me, Oliver," Cypher's voice echoed through the room. "But this will be your end. Here, I'll show you how powerful I truly am." Ignoring Cypher's threats, Oliver gripped his sword tightly. At that moment, mechanical arms emerged from the walls. The arms moved swiftly toward Oliver, their steel claws aiming to strike with deadly precision. Oliver quickly dodged, but the arms kept coming, their attacks growing faster and more relentless with each passing second. When one arm swung at him, Oliver raised his sword and sliced it in half. Sparks flew, and the metal piece clattered to the ground. But more arms followed, each one intent on tearing him apart. Oliver skillfully deflected the attacks, destroying each arm as they came at him. But every arm he cut down seemed to be replaced by another. Spotting a momentary opening, Oliver's eyes locked onto a system panel across the room. It controlled the arms. Formulating a plan, he fought his way toward the panel, dodging and slashing through the relentless barrage. As another arm lunged at him, Oliver sidestepped and slashed it to pieces. Then, with a swift move, he reached the panel and struck it with his sword. The electronics sparked and exploded, and the mechanical arms froze in place. Oliver took a deep breath. Though he had won this battle, an uneasy feeling remained. Cypher was still out there, and Oliver knew he had to stop him to truly end this fight. Cypher's voice echoed again. "Impressive performance, but you still don't understand the true rules of this world. Here, everything is under my control." Suddenly, the ground began to shake. Holographic windows opened around the room, and from them emerged armed virtual soldiers. Each soldier was clad in heavy metal armor, wielding deadly plasma rifles. Their eyes locked onto Oliver. Oliver exhaled deeply. There was no escape. He gripped his sword tightly, readying himself. The first soldier aimed his plasma rifle and fired. Oliver rolled out of the way just as the plasma shot sizzled past him and hit the wall. He quickly sprang to his feet and dashed toward the soldier. With one swift swing of his sword, he shattered the soldier's armor and brought him down. But the others kept firing. Oliver kept moving, constantly dodging the plasma blasts. The rifles had a wide range, but Oliver expertly avoided every shot, targeting the soldiers' weak spots with precision. The weight of their armor slowed the soldiers down, giving Oliver the advantage. He downed another soldier and turned to face the remaining three, who were trying to pin him down with rapid fire. In one fluid motion, Oliver scaled the wall, flipped through the air, and landed in the middle of the group. His sword flashed as he shattered a soldier's helmet, then spun toward the other two. The soldiers tried to coordinate their attacks, but Oliver's agility made them powerless. He dodged each shot, landing blow after blow. When the last soldier fell, Oliver sheathed his sword, breathing heavily. Though he had defeated them, his final battle was yet to come. He had to face Cypher. At that moment, the large holographic screen in the center of the room flickered and collapsed, revealing Cypher's form. In this virtual world, Cypher possessed superhuman powers, and Oliver would have to fight against this overwhelming force. Cypher raised his hand, summoning a massive energy ball in the air. Oliver knew that this was a deadly move. He drew his sword again, but there wasn't enough time to dodge when Cypher hurled the energy at him. The energy ball shot toward Oliver. At the last second, Oliver threw himself to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast. The energy struck the ground, creating a massive explosion that shook the entire room. The floor began to crack. Cypher prepared another attack, but Oliver knew that a direct assault wouldn't work. He needed to access the virtual world's codes. His gaze darted to a control panel in the corner of the room. As Cypher gathered energy once more, Oliver sprinted toward the panel. Just before Cypher's attack reached him, Oliver opened the panel and accessed the codes. Within moments, he found the necessary command to deactivate Cypher's digital presence. He quickly input the code, and Cypher's body froze, then shattered into nothingness. Oliver had succeeded in stopping Cypher. The virtual world fell into silence once again. But as the victory settled in, Oliver felt an overwhelming emptiness. The real world was still waiting, but he realized the lines between these two worlds were becoming increasingly blurred. I hope you had a good time. If you liked my story, do not forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye. See you in the next story.